messenger.
Russell Brand.
Actor.
Russell
Controversial conspiracy theorist.
Trying to bring real journalism to the American people.
Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand on Rumble. If you're watching me anywhere other than Rumble, like X or YouTube, click the link in the description and get Rumble Premium. You get additional content, not just from me, but from Crowder and Mug Club and Tim Cast and many of Rumble's premium content creators. We're still, in a sense, I suppose, analysing the murder of Charlie Kirk and the subsequent consequences and conversations. In a way, it's no different than any other artifact that takes place now in the ubiquitous, ongoing public square. An event occurs, there's possibly a genuine reaction, potentially there's our unconscious reactions to things. Let me give you a personal example. How can I objectively respond to the murder of Charlie Kirk without, on secondary, ulterior, and not even properly recognised or understood levels, thinking, will this affect me? Is this good for me? Is this bad for me? While successively and simultaneously being hit by waves of, oh my God, his children were there that day. So all of us are kind of trying to work out whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And I guess that's why, obviously it's a bad thing, but like when you hear people say dumb stuff, like I feel like Destiny said some dumb stuff, and people on the left now are scrutinising the motivations of the assailant in order to, I suppose, legitimise maintaining their own position. Look, here's something I do know quite a lot about: addiction. And when you're dealing with a drug addict, you get a sense of whether or not the drug addict actually wants to stop taking drugs or wants to legitimise carrying on with their addictive behaviour. And as a person that's in recovery, I have an obligation to help people get clean from drugs and alcohol. And I've, over the 22 and nearly 23 years that I've been free from drugs and alcohol, learned to detect whether or not someone is serious about stopping or really they just want the problems to stop. And what I feel that we're experiencing as a culture now are various invitations to embrace some pretty significant and serious change. But the consequences of accepting those invitations are so radical that many people won't want them. And that's why we live in an age of hypocrisy and contradiction. Principles are everything. So I think it's possible to approach free speech from the left or from the right. But if your position on free speech alters, that means it's probably not a principle, and it never was a principle. You were probably just using an opportunity to defend your position and pursue an objective. And over the course of the show today, that's what we're going to be discussing: people's unconscious motivations. Remember that while I'm here now talking to you, I've got all of my various challenges in life. I'm defined by my challenges as a husband and as a father, and I know that unless my primary challenge is the maintenance of a connection with God, and thank the Lord that I now accept someone else's definition of what God is rather than my own. If there's one fundamental difference between being a New Age believer and a Christian, it's that I no longer provide the explanation for what belief in God looks like, for what a spiritual program of action would seem like to the outside. Because I remember one of my really beloved friends I used to make content with very near the beginning of my career, my beloved friend Matt Morgan. He used to say, you talk all the time about communism and socialism and sharing and revolution, but you're probably one of the most selfish people I've ever known in my life. And I just think that guy's got a point, because like most addicts, I'm pretty self-obsessed. And the journey of faith for me has been about altering the monologue of my internal life, i.e., it's sort of like a dialogue. You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have said that. Why don't you do that? I wonder if that's going to happen. It's kind of like a dialogue, but both voices are me. But it's becoming a dialogue between me and, you'll know as a Christian, Christ. Like I feel him and hear him within me. And my hope is that eventually it will become a monologue again and it will just be him. He must become greater I must become lesser, is how that is described in Scripture. With that said, let's have a look at some of the various insights and hot takes on the brutal murder of a 31-year-old man who's the product of some contrary and contradicting ideas, a traditionalist, a conservative and a Christian who was very much a product of modern media. Let's look at how that's being used by the right. Let's have a look at how it's being used by the left. Let's have a look at how content creators are exploiting it. Let's have a look at the impact that it's having in the political space, because in a way now, there's Charlie Kirk's death, as it will appear to his widow, Erica, and his children, the impact of which obviously be felt over many years. And then there's the separate Charlie Kirk's death that is just an object. It's just an object, a machine. Gutierrez and Deleuze, the sort of post-structuralist French philosophers, would say that it's just like a machine now. Charlie Kirk's death can just operate in all sorts of directions. Let's have a look at some of that. Firstly, I want to look at this mainstream comedian, Jimmy Kimmel. Now, when I used to live in Los Angeles and be promoting movies and that had a very different kind of life that was focused on what I would call a paganized culture, where I worshipped my own sexuality, I worshipped my own personal power and identity, Jimmy Kimmel was a person I liked. And when I say that, I'm not even trying to be derisory about Jimmy Kimmel. I remember thinking, this person is a nice guy. Like, I like him. And like, you know, to give you sort of a more contemporary iteration of that idea, I recently, yesterday in fact, spoke to Nick Fuentes for the first time. And while I was looking at and talking to Nick Fuentes, that interview will be here on Rumble tomorrow, I was thinking, how's this guy like an anti-Semite or whatever? He's like, seems really like a nice person. And when I eventually asked him about Israel and Judaism, that's what I was in particular focusing on. Who are we really? Is anyone, if you drill down, this is probably a pretty fundamental thing that I had this conversation with Brené Brown a long time ago when I was doing that kind of content. I was in that kind of world. She's a very brilliant person, Brené Brown. And we talked about, do you, and this is a question I would ask of you, let me know in the comments and chat, do you believe people are trying their best? And do you believe that people are fundamentally good or not? What do you think? And Brené Brown said that when she was a social worker, she said that sometimes she would go and visit houses of people and they were neglecting their kids. And she was like, no, these people can't be doing their best. They're making too much of a mess of it. But over time, she came to accept that they probably are. Emmett Fox, the brilliant Christian analyst, cites a potentially apocryphal tale about a Quaker who, when encountering a newcomer to his town, gets this question. Hey, I don't know what you call a Quaker. Mate, is what I'd call him. Oi, mate, what are people like in this town where we live in? And the Quaker goes, well, what were the people like in the town you just come from? He went, they are horrible, mean people. He goes, you'll probably find the people around here like that as well. And then moments later, another person approaches the Quaker and goes, I heard what you said, but I really like the people round here. I think they're really cool and everything. And he goes, well, what did you think of the people in the town you just came from? He goes, I like them as well. He goes, yeah, you will find it so wherever you go. Because perhaps on some level, the external reality that we experience is an expression of something within us. The kingdom of heaven is within. Seek thee first the kingdom of heaven, and all righteousness will be granted unto you. If I can put myself in alignment with core spiritual values inwardly, then my relationships, even with people I disagree with or people that may wish me harm, will become lessons and opportunities. If I'm not able to do that, I'm going to be in a pretty hideous fight that won't really lead to anything of value. That said, let's have a look at Jimmy Kimmel, and let's, in good faith, see where he's going with his, I guess it's commentary on Charlie Kirk's murder. Let's have a look. Now, I'm not saying that you couldn't do comedy. I, the other day, went to Washington, D.C. to participate in a Maha event. I'm a big supporter of Secretary Kennedy and of Dr. Oz and people that I believe, this is what I believe, and I pray this is the case, that they have identified that you are not going to make America healthy unless you take on the interests of big agriculture, big food and big pharma, and the lobbying and donor interests that ensure that policy in these areas can never significantly change, whether you vote for Donald Trump, Adolf Hitler, Karl Marx or Princess Diana. As long as those institutions remain in place, then you'll get the same kind of policy around agriculture, food, pharma. Well, certainly you'll have significant resistance if you're trying to change it, as I believe Secretary Kennedy is. In fact, I see that he is. You see that he is too, right? So, when I was there, I was doing like a little talk at a convention, and just as I started talking, someone like walked right behind me. It's someone I knew, like someone who works with Secretary Kennedy, and I goes, "It's a bit of a sensitive time for people speaking in public. Yeah, just walk right behind me in my peripheral vision, like in the immediate aftermath of Charlie Kirk's death." So it's not a joke; it's a reference to it. I could see that the room were not like, how do we feel about this? None of us really know how to feel. But as the brilliant Irish poet W.B. Yeats said, the best of lost all conviction and the worst are full of dreadful certainty. The opposite of faith is not certain. The opposite of faith is not certainty. That's what I heard. Let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at this W.B. Yeats poem. See if this is of any use to you. The Second Coming. This is called The Second Coming by W.B. Yeats. Brilliant Irish poet. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. I like pitiless and blank as the sun, pagan godlessness, just bright might and white light without Christ, without love, without sacrifice. Pitiless, the desert birds. That the Antichrist may occur if we don't make a manger and a cradle in the low place. If we're unable to welcome in the low place, the place among the beasts, the stable, if we don't make a place there for the return of Christ, something else is coming. Let me know in the comments and chat who you think's coming down the pike, baby, because I can feel it pretty strongly. So let's look at this Charlie Kirk thing, man. Not Charlie Kirk, Jimmy Kimmel.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. Okay. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
So, in a way, if you look at that, you know what Jimmy Kimmel's perspective is on the right, which we knew anyway. We come to Jimmy Kimmel knowing that he is understandably an advocate for what we would call the modern iteration of the Democrat Party. This is a Democrat Party that's not about the rights of working people. This is a Democrat Party that doesn't care about taking on corporations. This is a Democrat Party that's not interested in marshalling Americans towards freedom against the interests of global corporations. It's not a Democrat Party that wants people to find divinity. It's a Democrat Party that altered its trajectory and its legislature in order that it could form comfortable relationships with big business. Think for a moment about the instance where Bernie Sanders was in that Senate financial hearing with Secretary Robert Kennedy, and Kennedy said, "You lot are taking money." Like, who's the lady? Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren. You've taken money off big pharma. We're all taking money off big pharma. We're all taking money. That's what we do. We take money from big pharma. So they're not even pretending anymore. So what I suppose with any news articles an opportunity to do this, even when it's frivolous, trivial things, is an opportunity to look at what are we actually saying, what are we actually discussing here. We're discussing now at this point, this is it. I'll tell you if you want to know. It's this. Centralized institutions of propaganda cannot control information anymore. That doesn't mean all of the information that you get outside of centralized institutions of propaganda is reliable. It just means it's not sanctioned. So you might have people on the left saying a lot of stuff that's not sanctioned, and people on the right saying a lot of stuff that's not sanctioned. Malcolm McLuhan, the famous, I guess you'd call him a philosopher and cultural analyst, said, "The medium is the message." He said that at a time that the prevalent forms of media were print and television, centralized media organizations that were controlled by a handful of individuals like your TV networks and print media now, and mine in my country, whether it's Rupert Murdoch, who owns the Times, or whoever. You can have a look at a list of who ultimately owns and controls MSNBC or whatever they're rebranding it as now. You'll find it's just a handful of individuals, and that they're partnered with various corporations commercially, and that they're part of larger conglomerates. So the medium is the message means if it's on TV, the message is going to be about centralized control. We need to control whole populations. We need to make them buy certain food. We need them to vote for certain political parties. We need them to ignore certain problems and pay attention to other matters. That's the message, and that's the medium. Now, the medium is the message means, oh no, by giving everybody a device, which means they can intercommunicate and we can potentially control them once we master AI surveillance and censorship, during the brief window before they crack that, there is the possibility for us to intercommunicate. But because, and there's no nice way of saying this, we're fucking dumb, we're arguing with one another about stupid stuff instead of recognizing we could bypass the centralized systems of control. And until we realize that and act upon it, we may as well not have these, because you're spending all your time masturbating, either physically or mentally, instead of awakening. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and the chat. We've got plenty of content for you today. Let me know how you're feeling, guys. I'm talking to you, Trip E8E8, and you, CMC Advanced, and God Rules It All, and all my friends over on locals like Lily Farm Girl and Happy Cappy, and all of you, really. Let's have a look at what Don Lemon says. He says here, now look, I can tell from the title of these clips, Don Lemon claims MAGA doesn't really care about Charlie Kirk, just clicks. Well, who do you think Don Lemon is really talking to when he says that? He's talking to Don Lemon. Don Lemon doesn't really care about Charlie Kirk. He cares about clicks. That's all. And guess what? Russell Brand wouldn't care about Charlie Kirk unless for Christ. Without Christ, all I'll care about is, well, I've seen me. I saw me before Christ. I saw what I was doing. All I wanted to do was, in a sort of a groping an empty, hollow, shallow abyss, looking for the formation and shadow of the cross. And let me tell you, without clear connection to him, it will take extraordinary forms out there. Mostly the false high poles and idols. You will find it in pagan goddesses, which, and gods, is just really an expression of, you might say lower, even though, it's not necessarily lower, forms of energy. Sex and drugs and rock and roll. Let's have a look at Don Lemon literally accusing of other people of what he's probably, I'm guessing because I've not seen the clip yet, doing himself.
The thing that is so obvious about it, and I think is so disgusting, is that you don't really care. You don't really care about Charlie Kirk. What you care is that this is a moment that you can use for clicks. to boost your podcast or your streaming show or your radio show or your television show or your news show or your
I reckon it goes through his mind in that moment. Oh no, am I doing that? Am I doing that?
or your MAGA bona fides with the MAGA group or your political stripes, that you can improve it, or you can have a moment where you're crying in front of the cameras. You gather all the reporters at the Capitol and you go, and it's your fault, and it's your fault, and it's the left, and whatever.
It's insane. Listen, we're going to talk about the news coverage of Tyler Robinson is the name of the murderer. We're going to look at some of the coverage because I feel like some people are almost trying to romanticize him. But first, we're going to have a message from one of our partners. Stay with us because it's probably pretty funny. I've been making pretty good adverts lately. Let's have a look. What makes Balance of Nature unique? So many things. Let me count the ways. They're supplements that are the result of years of research and are manufactured under current good manufacturing practices with regular third-party lab testing. They never add sugar or anything artificial. Any sugars occur naturally. How many more times?
Hey, Russell, are there phytonutrients in those?
Phytonutrients, if that's what you want, these are the phytonutrients for you. Balance of Nature delivers the phytonutrients that naturally occur in 47 whole fruits, vegetables, spices, and fibers. Their fruits and veggie supplements include 31 colourful ingredients like mango, pineapple. We've got phytonutrients coming out of our wazoo, which some people say is dangerous. Phytonutrients, and you know, as I said, all these vegetables and stuff, I can't emphasise the success of this product. 4 whole fibres, psyllium husk, flaxseed, monk fruit, apples, plus, by the way, 12 aromatic spices such as cinnamon, turmeric, and cardamom. 1 for each disciple. You gotta get them! Take them with water, chew them, mix them into food or drink. Balance of Nature supplements are vegan, kosher, right, Isaac? Gluten-free. They've got it all. If you're taking Balance of Nature, the easiest way to stay consistent is by becoming a preferred customer. That means, that's right, recurrent income. Sign up to it so you don't even get to think that stuff's coming to your door, whether you like it or not. Your supplements show up automatically every 28 days. Just try cancelling this stuff. You can't. You'll be buying this when you're long dead, like a voter in Chicago. No reordering, no running out, no hassle. The best part, preferred customers always get the lowest price we offer, plus free shipping every single month. It just shows up your door right when you need it. Oh, hello, you. So if you're ready to save money, stick to your routine and take the guesswork out of it, becoming a preferred customer is the best way to go. Sign up with the code Russell. That's my name, 2 S's, 2 L's. Go to www.balanceofnature.com and sign up as a new preferred customer with code Russell to get 35% off your first order plus free fibre and spice supplement. For God's sake, hurry. This offer's only available while supplies last. That's true of all offers, of course. Once you're out of supplies, you can't, then where would you get it? Now, back to the content. Now listen, you lot, tell me, what do you want us to talk about? There's so much. We can talk about you might call it legacy media framing the murderer of Charlie Kirk in the most favourable and romantic terms. That does seem pretty interesting. We've got a lot of stuff on Epstein and the UK and free speech and how like people are flipping sides over free speech again. I know that I'm going to definitely do that free speech stuff. But will you lot tell me in the chat, like you lot on Locals, what do you talk about most? Or See No Free says, let's talk about me. Well, I have done that, but there's not so much I can say about you, to be honest, is there? Remember, we've got Nick Fuentes coming on the show tomorrow. I've taped it already, and it's pretty good. I think what's good about it is it's a conversation. Like, can you imagine these days being able to talk to people that have, like, opposing views on a variety of subjects and it not go insane? Like, I watch Piers Morgan clips. You know, does anyone watch the whole show? God, who could watch a whole show of anything these days? Wouldn't it probably kill you? But like, I watch it sometimes. It seems like it's designed around generating conflict. Well, I don't think that's going to help. I don't think that's going to help either. So tell me, you guys, what you want. First, while you're doing that, while you're telling me what you want to watch on the Rumble stream, remember, get Rumble Premium if you don't have it yet. I'm going to tell you, as best as I can, why there is this sort of sentimental reporting about Tyler Robinson, who I think, where's the most recent stuff that we had in the WhatsApp, like, you know, that I asked to put in that's about, like, the suicide stuff and all of that? We just tell me what number it's on after I get into this. Okay, Tyler Robinson confesses shooting in messages to my love. Let's have a look at that. Oh, sorry, these just like a load of text messages that I'm never going to be able to, you know. Okay, so that's his text messages. Let's have a look at ABC talking about in somewhat sentimental terms, I understand the murder.
We have seen an alleged murder with such specific text messages about the alleged murder weapon, where it was hidden, how it was placed, what was on it, but also it was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect.
That's a weird thing to highlight.
Us didn't expect a very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate who is transitioning, calling him my love, and I want to protect you, my love. So it was this duality of someone who the attorney said not only jeopardized the life of Charlie Kirk and the crowd, but was doing it in front of children, which is one of the aggravating circumstances of this case. And on the other hand, he was, speaking so lovingly about his partner. So a very interesting and, as Pierre said, riveting press conference, David.
It was tough.
Let's have a look at this, Montel Williams.
There are people who are trying to pigeonhole this as a leftist thing and a right thing. And what we're really talking about, hear me because I'm going to throw you when I say this. We're talking about a love-torn child, a kid. This is probably his first real relationship, and somebody was disparaging the person that he loved. He sat on that building for 30 minutes before he took the shot. Why did he wait until the first word trans came up? Then he took the shot.
You think he heard it? He could hear it?
I think he could hear it.
Oh my God, he can't hear from up there, up on a roof doing that sniping. It's interesting that I suppose in a way what we should be doing is the opposite of what's happening. Be compassionate towards the people we disagree with and not fetishize what we already believe.
He could hear it. I think he also, I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally. I think
that's interesting because in a way those taxonomies, the categories of emotional and political and religious, they can all be dissected and disintegrated if you have a good enough analytic and a clear enough objective. For example, if you think right now, there will be some people who are really, really furious, and probably if they had the time and the ability to reflect on what they were feeling, you would locate various islands of grief and pain in your own life that had been lit up in the circuitry of your consciousness and your spiritual life by this event, like how a light switch works. You press the button, the circuit is completed, the light lights up. So when a button is pushed in you, like if you've, imagine this, imagine that you're so certain that, like a saint, if you're a saint, you're Saint Francis, you're Saint Paul, you're one of the many great saints, and someone dies, you may feel compassion, even sympathy for the people that have died, but you are certain that God is real, that the sensory reality that we occupy temporarily is secondary to the great spiritual life. Now, I don't know Charlie Kirk well. I interviewed him, he interviewed me, I spoke to him a few times, and I was sort of fascinated by him, is what I would say. What I sense, though, is that Charlie Kirk does have a deep and abiding faith in Christ and would be willing to die for what he believes in. His emphasis, and it's like his emphasis on the political aspects of conservatism and the deployment of Christian principles in a political context is an area where I would disagree with him. But what I agreed with him on strongly, and agree with anyone on, is that the spiritual life is real, and what we're living in is an expression of God. And if you don't return to God regularly, you'll make God out of sort of temporary passing stuff. Like dear old Montel Williams there. Let's have a look at another story for a minute now. Over in the UK, things are falling apart. Although there's a lot of optimism and hope, primarily coming out of nationalism and right-wing patriotism and the protests that centre on the flag, which sort of seem to have as their central motif and explicitly have anti-migration sentiments. We sent our beloved reporter, my friend Joe McCann, we didn't send him anywhere, he was already in the UK, we just gave him a camera and said, yeah, we film this stuff. And what I was struck by when watching that content was that there were, among the patriotic protesters that day, there was quite a lot of goodwill and good feeling, and something that I've always hoped for, whether I had been using the language and the colours of the left or right, a sense that you're really representing the will of the people. the will of the people under God. Because the will of the people could become a very desperate and appalling thing, actually, if misguided and misdirected. So, which generally it is. The thing that's exciting about it, for me at least, is that the UK, whether you're approaching it from a left-wing perspective or a right-wing perspective, is falling apart. Everyone is in absolute alignment when it comes to their perspective on Keir Starmer. The number of people that have got delightful chants and songs that centre on Keir Starmer being a wanker is a near miracle and certainly a joy to behold. At the heart of the British establishment now are serious, serious problems. Keir Starmer was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service and had, as I understand, a pretty close relationship with MI5. The person that was being proposed as Britain's ambassador to your country, America, Peter Mandelson, he's been an acolyte around power for a long, long time. He was there with Tony Blair. He was advocating for war. He was helping to sex up dossiers. He was helping to ensure that Iraq could be invaded and that people believed there were weapons of mass destruction. He's been sacked on numerous occasions, usually in some way connected to dishonesty. So the idea that Keir Starmer wouldn't know that Peter Mandelson had a close friendship to, drumroll please, Jeffrey Epstein is ridiculous, outrageous, impossible. And yet that's what Keir Starmer has claimed. Is it possible that Keir Starmer, with his deep establishment ties, he's the Prime Minister, and before that he's the head of the CPS, and before that he was the leader of the opposition, getting well involved in ensuring that the MI5 could facilitate the removal of the previous leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, a kind of old school leftist, anti-establishment leftist. Such a thing still exists, you know. Is it possible that he wouldn't know about Peter Mandelson's connection to Epstein? So Epstein, whether you're in your country, the United States, or in mine, the United Kingdom, continues to be a kind of scab that, if picked at, reveals the pus and disease within the body politic. Because surely the challenge is this: it ain't confined to any individual nation. That was always the problem. There's a kind of global imperialism masked by nation that's able to maneuver regardless of who's in government. That's what we were discussing before people started to get all distracted by, you know, their own side winning. So let's have a look at Keir Starmer saying he didn't know that Peter Mandelson was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Then we will look at various other people pretending it's impossible for them to know. And let's have a look here. This is from a legacy media newspaper, from the Times, apparently, again owned by one media baron, again aligned with the same sort of global corporatist interest that we spend a lot of our time talking about. Keir Starmer offered Lord Mandelson his full backing in the Commons, despite knowing the Foreign Office was investigating a leaked cache of emails between him and convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Starmer does not appear to have asked for details of the emails or the investigation before defending the former ambassador to the hilt at Prime Minister's question time. That's like, you know, when you see Trump there getting questions, even though Mandelson publicly warned hours earlier that very embarrassing messages are about they're embarrassing. He's chatting with a paedophile. Starmer knew. I'm a bit embarrassed. I've been chatting to a paedophile for ages, and yeah, that is embarrassing. I mean, I suppose a paedophile is still a child of God and, you know, worthy of forgiveness. But what you've got to point out is that dear old Peter all of these people in the upper echelons of power, look at what's going on with them. Why are they all so friendly with paedophiles? What's going on? What is this? Is it just a coincidence? Is it like, you know, like if you went to one geographical neighbourhood, you'd expect everyone to support a particular football or baseball team? Because it seems like these lot can't get enough paedophilia. Starmer knew about the Foreign Office investigation. He knew that Mandelson said the emails were about to come out, yet for whatever reason he decided not to ask further questions and went out to defend Mandelson. That almost makes me like Keir Starmer more, because he didn't go, listen, looks like you might be somehow affiliated with sexual malpractice and paedophilia. I've got to distance myself from you a little bit. I've got a country to run. But he didn't do that. Why would that be? Let's have a look at Keir Starmer defending those allegations and defending that decision, because there are no allegations against Peter Mandelson. It's just the punishment is he can't be ambassador to the United States of America. Let's get into this story because it's connected to Epstein. It's connected to global power. It's connected to deception.
It's important to appreciate what happened when, and I understand that. Obviously, the diplomatic post of American ambassador, really important post. And Peter Mandelson, before he was appointed, went through a due diligence process. That's the propriety and ethics team went through a process. And therefore, I knew of his association with Epstein. But had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
I'd known then what I'd known now, I'd never appoint a pal of a paedophile. I just thought he was pals with a paedophile, but not in a deeply entrenched way. You can hang out with paedophiles, you know, and not get dragged into their pedophilia. You could just be chatting about other stuff, like weather or sports memorabilia. Just because someone's friends with a paedophile, don't go around judging that poor old fucker. He may be that he was just hanging out sharing candy and, you know, maybe a sucker. There's no reason to think that necessarily that these people that keep getting arrested for paedophilia are involved in, I don't know, deep-seated satanic adrenochrome sipping occultist power. They might have only been watching pedophilia videos on the internet for, I don't know, something like half an hour. Why would we condemn these poor souls? Back to you, Keir.
I never appointed him. Because what emerged last week...
We're leaving YouTube now. Click the link in the description. Come watch some Rumble, baby.
Because what emerged last week were emails, Bloomberg emails, which showed that the nature and extent of the relationship that Peter Mandelson had with Epstein was far different to what I had understood to be the position when I appointed him. On top of that, what the email showed was he was not only questioning, but wanting to challenge the conviction of Epstein at the time. That, for me, went and cut across the